I still remember the way the laughter rolled across the dinner table that night. But not for anything I said. It was because of her Vanessa, my daughter-in-law. She had found a way to make me the punchline in my own son's home. I can still feel the heat rising in my cheeks as she waved off my contribution, that homemade pie I had spent the whole afternoon preparing. She said it with such charm for the guests, as if it were all a light-hearted joke. But underneath her words, I heard the message loud and clear: I didn't belong. Not even at my own family's table. The pie sat untouched in the center of the table, its crust golden, the filling rich and sweet. Everything I'd once been proud to share. No one picked it up. The sight of it turned into a mirror, reflecting the truth I had tried so hard not to face. I felt invisible, like the years of sacrifice I had poured into raising Ethan, my only son, had evaporated into thin air. It wasn't just about dessert. That pie carried memories of birthdays when I stretched every dollar to make things special. Of late nights grading papers after long shifts of teaching. Of years when I went without so Ethan could have new shoes for school. Every slice I used to serve represented a piece of my love and my labor. And now, in front of neighbors, friends, and people I hardly knew, that love was dismissed as something unnecessary. What hurt the most wasn't Vanessa's sharp tongue. It was Ethan's silence. He sat there, smiling faintly, letting her words stand as if he agreed. That silence pierced deeper than any insult ever could. I sat through the rest of the evening, smiling politely, nodding where expected. But inside, my heart was breaking. I knew, as I looked at that untouched pie, that this wasn't just one moment of disrespect. It was the symptom of something bigger, something that had been growing for years, and I could no longer ignore it. At 4:42 a.m., Kira's breathing stilled as movement flickered near the south edge of the compound. Through her scope, she watched Neptune element advance into the dry wadi, just as planned. The lead man, Petty Officer Simmons, swept left, the team peeling in behind him in a staggered file. The temperature had dropped to 61, and a thin layer of dust rolled with every step they took. She counted 8 shadows moving through the terrain. Everything was too quiet. Then the kill box opened. 3 simultaneous muzzle flashes lit up from the upper ridge directly east. The distinctive clatter of PKM machine guns ripped across the canyon. The rounds stitched across the wadi walls and chewed through the packed dirt floor. Kira's eye tracked the incoming arcs. These weren't spray-and-pray volleys. The shooters were coordinated, bracketing the seals between interlocking fields of fire. Simmons went down instantly, his leg folded under him in a way that made her stomach tighten. A second operator dove behind a low rise and began returning fire with an M4 suppressed carbine, but it was wild, desperate. She watched a third SEAL apply a tourniquet to his own thigh, blood soaking his pant leg down to the boot. The team scrambled behind a rusted-out BTR-60, the old Soviet hull groaning under a fresh rain of bullets. From her position, Kira could see what they couldn't. A 2-man RPG team sprinted into position at the top of the far slope. One carried the launcher. The other prepped the round. They had a clean line of fire to the BTR. She keyed her radio. Chaos Overwatch to Neptune 1. Troops in contact. Multiple enemy positions. RPG team on elevation grid 42 SV 8345. Requesting immediate clearance to engage. Over. The net hissed. Chief Logan's voice crackled back, tighter than usual. Negative. Overwatch. We've got it under control. Stay off this net. Out. Kira stared at the radio for a half-second longer than she should have. The RPG gunner shouldered the tube. She could see the assistant feeding the round into place. 15 seconds. maybe less. The BTR wasn't cover. It was about to become a coffin. Her finger rested alongside the trigger guard. Not yet inside. She wasn't just thinking about the seals anymore. She was thinking about her ROE. She'd been told observe and report, but she also knew the standing order engage only to defend American lives facing imminent threat. That threat was here. She keyed the radio again. Voice level. Chaos Overwatch to Neptune 1. Confirm negative engage order while U.S. forces are under sustained and coordinated enemy fire. Over. Static. No response. Kira didn't ask again. She adjusted her wind hold, accounting for 5 knots cross from west. Elevation dialed to 3.2 mils. The RPG gunner came into perfect focus, kneeling, bracing to fire. Her chest pressed into the dirt. Her breathing settled. Her pulse slowed. 4 pounds of pressure, and the trigger broke clean. The shot cracked through the valley like distant thunder. The 300 Norma Magnum round traveled just over 1 second before impacting the gunner center chest. He folded backwards, the launcher spinning away. Kira was already transitioning. She scanned left, found the PKM firing from the ridgeline. A quick mill hold for drop. Fire. Hit. She dialed back to a second gunner repositioning behind a boulder. Another shot. Dust exploded from behind him. A scream. Confirmed hit. On the comms? Voices erupted. Who's firing? Who authorized is that Chaos Overwatch? She didn't answer. Instead, she watched through glass as the SEALs huddled tighter, waiting for the next round of hell. And she knew, if she didn't keep firing, they'd never make it out. That night, after the last guest had gone and the sound of laughter faded from the walls, I sat alone in the quiet. The pie was still there, untouched. Its crust cracked slightly from sitting out too long. I stared at it for a long while because it felt like I was staring at myself prepared with love, offered with care, and left unwanted. It's strange how one simple thing can carry so much weight. That pie wasn't just dessert. It was a reminder of everything I had poured into this family over the years. I spent decades working as a teacher, coming home exhausted, yet still managing to put dinner on the table and help Ethan with his homework. I clipped coupons, patched old clothes, and stretched paychecks to make sure he never felt the sharp edge of scarcity. Every holiday, every birthday, every milestone I gave my best, even when it meant I had nothing left for myself. And yet, looking at that untouched pie, I realized something had shifted. Somewhere along the way, the sacrifices that once spoke of love had turned invisible. What once was appreciated was now dismissed as unnecessary, maybe even burdensome. The pie symbolized more than just rejection at dinner. It was a symbol of how easily I could be brushed aside, my presence overlooked, my effort taken for granted. The ache inside me wasn't just sadness, it was the beginning of suspicion. A quiet voice whispering that this wasn't an isolated moment. This was part of a pattern, a slow erosion of respect that I had tried to ignore. And sitting in that silence, I knew the uneasy truth, something deeper was wrong. And if I didn't face it, it would only grow worse. It had been about 6 months earlier when Ethan sat across from me at my kitchen table. His voice was careful, measured, the way he always spoke when he wanted something from me. He told me it might be practical if Vanessa had access to my credit card just in case of emergencies for Tyler. He made it sound reasonable, even thoughtful, and I wanted to believe him. After all, hadn't I always trusted my son? Hadn't I always wanted to make life easier for my grandson? At first, the charges that appeared seemed harmless. a new pair of sneakers for Tyler, school supplies, even a pediatrician's visit 1 month when he caught a stubborn cold. I felt a small glow of reassurance, thinking that my help was making a difference, that I was still part of Ethan's household in some quiet, useful way. When Vanessa sent me short thank you notes, even if they felt polite more than warm, I clung to them as proof that I was doing the right thing. But slowly, the statements began to change. A spa package appeared 1 month, over $300. I told myself she was probably tired, that maybe she needed to relax. The next month, it was a series of charges at upscale restaurants, places I had never even heard of, each meal more expensive than what I used to spend in a week of groceries. My stomach tightened when I read those numbers. Still, I tried to silence the unease. I told myself this was family. Family helps each other. Yet the unease only grew. Each statement brought new surprises, things that had nothing to do with emergencies, nothing to do with Tyler. With every line I read, I felt something cracking inside me. The trust I had given so freely was being chipped away, replaced by the creeping fear that I was being used. I wanted to believe the best, but the numbers didn't lie. And deep down, I knew I couldn't keep looking away. Something was happening here, and if I didn't face it soon, the damage would only grow worse. The first month, I saw $300 for a spa day. The second month, it was over $600 at a boutique clothing store. By the third, the bill had crossed into the thousands, and my hands trembled as I held the statement. The numbers bled together, but the truth was sharp and undeniable. This wasn't about helping with my grandson anymore. This was indulgence, plain and simple, and it was on my back. I started keeping the statements in a neat folder. Each one slipped into place like evidence in a case file. I told myself I was just being organized, but deep down, I knew I was building proof. Every page told the same story: dinners at fine restaurants, luxury cosmetics, online orders for designer handbags. The charges stacked up like bricks, forming a wall I couldn't ignore. Month after month, the totals grew heavier, reaching into the thousands, until my chest ached every time I opened the envelope. It was more than the money. It was the realization of what that spending meant. My trust, my generosity, was being twisted into something ugly. I had offered a hand, and instead, they were pulling me under. I thought about all the years I scraped by, pinching pennies, denying myself small pleasures so Ethan could have more. And now, here I was, watching my daughter-in-law enjoy luxuries I had never afforded for myself, paid for with my own sacrifice. The heartbreak was real, but something else began to rise underneath it. A steadiness, a quiet fire. I couldn't stop the ache in my chest, but I could feel a shift inside me. For too long, I had let things slide, telling myself it was just family. But family should not leave you empty. Family should not take without giving back. I closed the folder that night and set it aside on my desk. My hands were still shaking, but not just from hurt. They were steadying themselves for something bigger. I knew the breaking point was coming, and when it did, I would no longer be silent. It happened again, almost as if the universe was testing how much I could bear. Another gathering, another evening where I sat at the edge of the table, present but invisible. Vanessa, polished and radiant in her designer dress, floated from one group of guests to another, telling stories, drawing laughter. When she finally returned to sit near me, her words cut sharper than any knife. She spoke lightly, with that rehearsed laugh of hers. But the sting was real, a reminder that in her eyes, I was little more than an ornament, something to keep in the background, not someone who mattered. I felt the same heat crawl up my neck, the same tightness in my chest. But this time, it wasn't just her words. It was Ethan's silence. My son, the boy I had carried through sickness and scraped knees, the man I had worked myself raw to raise, he sat there, eyes lowered, mouth closed. No defense, no protest, nothing. The weight of his silence pressed harder on me than her ridicule ever could. In that moment, the heartbreak burned into something different. I looked around the room at the glittering wine glasses, the polished silverware, the smiles that meant nothing, and I realized I had been playing the part they assigned me. The quiet one, the agreeable one, the one who endured in silence. But not anymore. Her laugh echoed in my ears, but for the first time, I didn't shrink from it. I absorbed it. I let it harden something inside me. I had been humiliated, dismissed, and taken advantage of for too long. I thought of the credit card bills stacked in my folder, the pie left untouched, the countless ways my presence had been belittled. It all collided into one truth: I would not let this continue. That night, as I drove home under the cold stars, I wasn't just a hurt mother anymore. I was a woman making a vow. I would take back control quietly, carefully, but with a resolve that could not be broken. The night I finally decided enough was enough. I sat at my desk with every statement spread before me. Page after page, the charges stared back like silent accusations. Spa trips, expensive restaurants, handbags that cost more than a month of groceries. I stacked them in order, slipping each into a clear sleeve, building a record of truth. For years, I had collected report cards and family photos with the same care. Now, I was collecting evidence of betrayal. It wasn't easy. Every page carried Ethan's name in some way, a reminder that this wasn't just about Vanessa. My son had allowed this. Maybe not directly, maybe not with malice, but his silence had become consent. That truth stung sharper than any number on a bill. I called my accountant, a woman I'd trusted for more than a decade. I kept my voice steady as I asked about what recourse I had, what protections I should consider. She didn't speak to me like I was naive or overreacting. She laid out options, explained the importance of documenting everything, and reminded me that it wasn't weakness to defend myself, it was wisdom. I hung up the phone with a folder full of facts and a new sense of clarity. In the following days, I combed through bank records, highlighted transactions, even printed receipts where I could. Each step was like stitching a safety net beneath myself, one I should have built long ago. It hurt, yes, but with every highlighted charge, I felt the heartbreak shifting into something steadier. Strength doesn't always arrive as fire. It sometimes arrives as calm, patient preparation. Still, the battle inside me raged. A part of me whispered that this was family, that maybe I should let it go, keep the peace. But another voice, stronger now, reminded me that peace without respect is only silence, and I had been silent too long. One evening, I slid the final statement into the folder and closed it with both hands. The ache was still there, but it was surrounded now by something unshakable. I wasn't just a mother or a grandmother anymore. I was a woman preparing to take back her dignity. The next time Vanessa tried to dismiss me, she would discover that I was no longer the quiet shadow at her table. I was ready. The day came sooner than I expected. Another family dinner, another moment where Vanessa assumed she held the reins. She breezed into the room, full of confidence, rearranging plans, talking over me, as if my presence was nothing more than decoration. For years, I had let that pass, but not this time. I sat straighter in my chair, my folder resting quietly on my lap. She didn't notice at first. She was too busy dictating who would sit where, how the evening would go, even tossing me a smile that carried no warmth. It was the same performance she always gave, a mix of charm and control. But when she dismissed me with another sharp remark, expecting my silence, I laid the folder gently on the table. My hands did not shake. One by one, I opened it, spreading the statements out like cards in a game only I knew how to play. The room grew quiet, eyes darting between me and the growing stack of papers. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Calmly, I explained what these pages showed: luxury handbags, fine dining, spa treatments, thousands of dollars drained in my name. Every line was a truth she couldn't laugh away. The color in her face shifted, her smile faltered, and for once, she had no quick response. Ethan's silence was there again. But this time, it didn't pierce me. I wasn't speaking for him. I was speaking for myself. For every time I had been overlooked, dismissed, made to feel small. The power in that moment wasn't in anger. It was in control. I watched Vanessa's composure crack, the certainty slipping from her eyes. She had built her confidence on the belief that I would always stay quiet, and I had just broken that illusion. When I gathered the papers back into the folder, the room was still heavy with silence, but it was a different silence than before. This time, it wasn't my silence. It was hers, for the first time in a long time. I felt the balance shift. The humiliation she had tried to place on me now sat squarely on her shoulders, and she knew it. The silence after I laid down the evidence felt endless. My folder sat closed, but its weight lingered in the room. Vanessa was the first to move, her words sharp and defensive, scrambling to frame herself as misunderstood, as if thousands of dollars could vanish by accident. Her voice rose, brittle and desperate, but it no longer had the power it once carried. What struck me most wasn't her anger. It was Ethan. He sat there, shoulders heavy, eyes fixed on the table. He didn't leap to her defense, but he didn't speak for me either. That silence, the same silence I had endured for years, cut deeper than Vanessa's protests. I wanted him to look at me, to acknowledge what I had endured, what I had carried. But all I saw was shame written across his face. For a moment, I felt the familiar ache, the pull to explain myself, to soften the edges, to make peace. But then I realized I didn't need to. I had spoken the truth. I had laid it bare. Whether they accepted it or not was no longer my burden. So I straightened in my chair and let Vanessa's fury roll past me like waves hitting stone. I set my boundary with quiet strength, reminding them both that my trust was not free, that respect was not optional. I had given, and now I had drawn the line. The room remained tense, the air thick with everything left unsaid. But beneath that heaviness, I felt something new, relief. Not joy, not victory, but the steady peace that comes when you finally stop allowing yourself to be diminished. For the first time in years, I wasn't shrinking back. I was standing in my own truth. In the quiet after everything, I found myself sitting alone again, but it wasn't the same kind of silence as before. This time, there was no sting, no humiliation pressing on my chest. There was peace. I thought back to the pie that no one touched, to the way Vanessa's laughter had stung, to the silence of my son that had cut me deeper than words ever could. Those moments used to feel like proof that I didn't matter. Now I see them differently. They were lessons, painful ones, that pushed me to draw the line I should have drawn long ago. Respect is not something you beg for. It is something you require. I had spent so many years giving, hoping that love and sacrifice would be enough to guarantee my place. But the truth is, even in family, boundaries are the backbone of respect. Without them, love gets twisted, generosity gets abused, and silence becomes complicity. Taking back my voice wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about reminding myself that I am worthy of dignity, no matter my age, no matter the mistakes of others. I can love my son and still refuse to be mistreated. I can adore my grandson and still protect my own peace. That night, I realized that the strongest kind of love is the one that doesn't erase you. It includes you, honors you. And if others can't give that, then you give it to yourself. So now I leave this story with a question. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you love? Even when it hurt? If you have, you know how hard it is, but also how freeing. Share your story with me. Let's remind each other that respect, at any age, is non-negotiable.